let's think about counterpoint, and I wanted to use a different example for that. So we get your second sheet. Look at the Mozart piano sonata number 2 in F major, Herschel 280. Now, this is buried within the movement, but it's interesting because you've got this, you've got a lot of play going on here between the bass and the top play. And also the inner voices too. Look for the main bass notes in a given measure. So in measure 1, don't look at every note in the bass as being the bass note. There's arpeggiation, so it's moving through chords. The first real bass note is F. And then there's a lot of embellishment. I mean, there's a lot of arpeggiation that goes on, presenting the other chord tones. The next bass note is
E flat.
Right. And then in measure 43, the second measure of the exam, D. Until the very end of the measure. And there's a C there.
Yeah.
Probably a passing chord because it's kind of on its way somewhere. D, going through C, and getting to B flat in measure 45, second system. So B flat goes on for a long while, and again, kind of similar rhythmic pattern going on here, harmonic rhythm. B natural comes toward the end of that measure. That's a new chord. And then next measure, you've got C as a main bass note. Okay, now you're going to find retardations, you're going to find suspensions, and when you have them, you want to use figures. You want to have it look like this. So show what the main chord is, and then show the decoration, the extra notes, by using these figures, which are intervals above the bass to account for. Yeah.
Are we missing a measure on this? I don't see a measure for.
Oh, we're actually not. We're actually not. I don't know. I took what I did. You can see my little cut there. That should be measure 43. But what I did was I cut that system with my scissors, literally, and I used the front end. Did you see what I did? Because I wanted the staff out there. I wanted you to have a trouble with it.
So that is measure 44.
That should be measure, yeah, 43, 44, and then 45. So we'll just need to talk about measures in our excerpts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here it is. I just stack it up. So you put in a stack of 30 as the lowest in the stack. Another thing you can do is you can say, I see a raised note. A major should be a flat.
Right.
But it's scandalously raised, so it's probably a leading tone to B flat.
Right.
And that's exactly what's going to go on there.
Right.
Okay, so now you can say this is 7 out of 4 in inversion,
Right.
the direct figures, and then figure out what's it going to in the end, and use that as your Roman numeral, but use the figures to show the letter. So you actually have to get past this and go, oh, it's resolving here. What is that chord? That's resolving in this chunk here. That's right. Okay, so now you write that here, and everything else shows up as a figure. See how he did this? Where he said, when it's all said and done, you've got a 1. And then all this extra stuff is just handled by numbers down here. Here are the numbers. So here you want to say, okay, it's going to a 4. eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just write that in there. But you don't get the notes yet. You've got the leading tone here, held over and then resolved late. So use a number to show that. And then do likewise with this part up here. That interval, that's a D flat to an A.
It's automatic.
So it's a sharp 5 above the bass, changing to the 6th. Now do this one as well. I won't write this one down yet, but do that one as well. That's its own symbol right here. F plus. And use a line. See it? And show the dissonance, and then use a line dash to show where it goes.
Okay.
So I can see, did it go up, did it go down, did it retardation?
It goes up to a 6.
5, there's the 7. They can converge if you want.
The line go lost.
And this here, that's a chord. So make the chord A, C, B flat, G.
I think it's a 6.
Let's see.
So this phase allows, put this symbol in here too so we can see. Yes. Where's the and that's raised.
About these notes.
So that is a leading tone to here.
Yeah.
But it's delayed, it's held over, and then goes, okay. So, when I see a note that's raised,
Mm-hmm.
I expect that it's a leading tone,
Yeah.
and then it'll resolve over here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's the root,
Mm-hmm.
then it's a 7 diminished 7 of something.
Yeah.
But if that leading tone has a note below it, a third lower,
Mm-hmm.
well then that's the agent. Remember the words, agent over there?
Agent.
Chordal third with a root. Then it's 5 of that thing. Right? 5 of whatever. Now this does not have an F below it. You know, there's no F here, so it can't
Yeah.
be 5 of that.
Yes.
It's got to be 7 of 4. Okay, so that's the first thing. But you could also get it like this: A, C, E flat, G flat, and realize that that is fully diminished 7. Fully diminished. And then notice, oh, it's inverted. So I need to not use 7, but 4, 3.
Okay.
Okay, so that's just giving that a label. Now the fun stuff happens. This is held over but goes up, so it's a, what is that
The
called?
living.
Almost, what's it called when it goes up?
Retardation.
Retardation.
Mhm. This one's held over but goes down, so it's a
Suspension.
suspension. Good. So we have a retardation and suspension. Thus far we put sharp 5, 6 to show this. How do we show the suspension down? Shasha, do you know what to do?
S, is it S 6 to 5?
65.
Yeah, and you just need to put that down here, but it's not 6 to 5 though. What's that interval right here? D flat up to C.
E to C.
Re, do.
That's 5.
7, 6.
7 to 6. But It's D to D to B first, and then D to C. Is that correct?
Well, the C comes first. Then,
Are you talking about this measure?
Measure 2.
yeah, measure
The
2.
bass is on D and the no,
Ah,
top is
okay.
on C, so
So
it's a
that
7.
is
But it's a suspension.
You might want to just circle that C so you
And
realize.
I-
Do you not write then a chord for the
To the
for
narrative.
B4? You're not writing, because
Oh, we
we've already notated the resolution. Well, I mean, it better not be 4, which probably 2, I think.
It's not 6/8, so you're.
6/8, so.
Yeah, you need this.
Right.
And this to handle all this motion, but then the
But
next
on
chord will
just
be
the very last beat will be, okay, right.
Yeah. Okay, so what's this here? F, A
Isn't that a
flat?
153?
Almost 1, 6, 4.
Mine, I'm sorry,
6/4, you probably meant
I'm sorry,
6/4.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's second inversion there. Yeah, so 1/6/4. 6/4s are always unstable, so you know they're going to be embellishing in some way. What kind of embellishment does this provide?
Passing.
Right, we'll look at the bass and say, that's passing. We already know what its function is from the get-go. Okay, now, look to this chord and tell me what's G flat, B flat, D flat in the key of F. Flat.
Neapolitan.
Yes, flat 2, which is the
Nep-
Neapolitan, right on. So, what inversion do Neapolitans tend to show up in?
6.
6.
First inversion, so this is totally normal.
There's 10 of them total.
Now, now we're using N for neighbor, so that's why most people nowadays use flat 2, 6. They use the Roman numeral for it.
Oh, really, not that, okay.
You can use the N, but there is the potential for confusion there, you see? N means neighbor, so. But this tells you a lot. It says it's a major chord. How do I know that?
G flat.
It's uppercase. See the symbol?
Right.
Okay, and it also tells me it's flat 2, scale degree flat 2, the lowered scale degree 2, that is the root of that chord. And then the 6 tells me first inversion. So you don't even have, as long as you know how Roman numerals work, you can write the right chord with that symbol. N6 is a little less clear, it's a little more ambiguous, so you can use the N6, that's okay, but this is just a little bit more precise, I guess. Okay, what's this here? It's incomplete, I know, but
7 diminish 7 of 5?
good. 7 diminish 7 of 5. And we expect 5 to come next, but what happens?
Suspension.
Suspension where?
6, 6, 4 to 5, 3.
Okay, so this part is doubled by an accompaniment part.
Mhm.
So you get 4, 3 here and here. Those are suspensions as they go downward. And here is the 6th, and it goes down as well. Remember, 6 is a consonant, so that's not, some people would even call it a suspension. Although in this case, you can, because it's literally held over. Over here, it was really, if you want to be really particular, this 6th is a passing tone. See that D to B, that's the 6th. You're passing through it. So you can treat the 6th in a variety of ways. Don't assume that 6/5 means it's necessarily a suspension kind of situation. This one is. And do you know why that A needs to go there to G? And that's significant?
Because the chordal 7.
It's the chordal 7th. So it has to go, the A flat has to get to G to resolve. So in this case, the 6 needs to go down. It can't just go up 6, 7 like it did over there because of the chord preceding. So here we see counterpoint creating a lot of nuances, decorating the dominant. Here, we're not so used to seeing it above a 4, but it's the same principle. You've got notes that should have gone to notes of the 4 chord. You know, these guys, it should have resolved right away. Should have resolved right away, but it's delayed. Either because you don't go down soon enough or because you don't go up soon enough. Those are the effect of counterpoint. Being fancy by delaying stuff. So melody here, you're almost tempted to put a chord symbol here, aren't you? I mean, on downbeat, you're expecting a chord change, so you kind of want to put a symbol there showing a chord that would accommodate that. But, and I guess you could D flat, F, A.
Yeah.
Okay, that's augmented, all right? You can try and make this work. And then the C. Okay, yeah, I guess a major augmented. I don't know, what do you call it? It's a little funky, but you could try and make it work, and you could put a symbol up there.
So would it be okay if we did that, having the 7 diminished of 4 and then going to 6 and then back to 4?
That would not be good. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense, because you know that this has to go to the 4.
Mm-hmm.
And why call that a separate chord? Because what's really going on is you're just delaying the resolutions.
But
to
that's
create
the
this
root of the
wonderful-
chord. That's why, like,
Okay,
how
you can
can you
try.
hear the 4 if you don't have the 4? Just by hearing that it's gonna come, the
Because you're
root.
having to wait for it to get there, and that's what makes it so expressive.
Okay.
But yeah, you don't have the 4, it's delayed until there. Scale degree 4 is delayed. But that would be a pretty funky chord to have a D flat augmented, but with a major 7 in there. That's a little crazy. Doesn't, you don't find those, so we don't have a word for it. We don't have a good label for it. But we could try and make it work with something like that, I guess. But much clearer to show that that isn't just an augmented triad. That's this note still hanging on and needing to resolve there. This shows kind of what, there's this funny, The Will of the Tones is this book by this guy named Schenker that we're going to talk about later, but he talks about chords, notes wanting to go certain places as if they have some sort of desire built in. But you can kind of get it, you know what I mean? It's kind of funky way to talk, but that note wants to go here. This note wants to go there. Yeah, but you want, okay, you want that note to resolve, and it does. It's just that it's delayed. So, okay, so there's an example of this counterpoint.
Philosophical question, just to.
Yeah, go there.
Is that because our ears are conditioned to want to go there, or is there something intrinsic? In other words, Western music, and we've grown up,
Yes,
we've
and
been
yes.
immersed in this. So are we expecting it because of patterns and what we're used to hearing, or is some of it intrinsic outside of that?
I'm sure some of it is intrinsic, although most people are going to emphasize the fact that you've been in trainings. You sync up with the music and you go, that's a leading tone that needs to resolve. It's a diminished
But that's what it
sound.
usually does, so is that
Mhm.
more?
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's based on something that is like the roughness of a dissonant sound. That's an acoustical thing that, psychology can measure roughness. I mean, it's a thing that we know is true. There's beating in there that contributes to the roughness when there's dissonance. And fully diminished is a pretty dissonant thing. So, here's it has it voiced. Okay, like this. You don't just leave it there, oh, okay. there's a reason why that's kind of like, scary or something in those silent films where the person's at the keyboard. That's because you should be a little worried if you just hang out there too long. That should go somewhere. And yeah, it takes a while for those two notes to get there. But they need to go. So I think there are measurable things that, that psychologically we hear in a particular way, and that it's right when they go to something less rough, in predictable ways. And the predictable thing is all about our culture and what we're used to hearing and all that good stuff. So I think it's a bit of both. Do you agree with that intuitively? You kind of go, yeah, there is something acoustical, non-negotiable going on, but because we're so used to hearing the rough go to the stable, pure, clean sounds, that pretty soon we expect it to, and that's part of it, part of the game. So, you know, like Balinese music, gamelan ensemble. Distance is great. In fact, it might sound really cool because it goes whoa, 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 whoa. You ever heard those big chimes? Whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, and you get something else that goes whoa, 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 in a different way, and you put them together, and it's like, whoa, this thing's alive, you know? It's cool because it's like the music is a very different phenomenon, and then you love all the distance is great. So yeah, there is cultural stuff going on here too.